Greetings and welcome again to the Force4Good Podcast. I'm Dennis Brooks, Senior Superintendent of Police here with the Jamaica Constabulary Force. Well, this week, our focus is on domestic violence. My guests this week are JCF National Domestic Violence Intervention Officer, Deputy Superintendent of Police Jacqueline Dillon, and also the Portmore Domestic Violence Center Manager, Detective Sergeant Damian Hammond. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the program.
Thank you, sir.
I think the best place to start is with the troublesome, sometimes confusing concept of what is domestic violence. I think it is a term that so many people use very loosely, and as a result, sometimes they include some things that are not, or they exclude some things that are. DSP Dillon, let's start there. What, from your practice and a perspective, what is domestic violence?
All right, so domestic violence is any form of violence that occur within the context of intimate partner relationship or family. So we're talking about those persons who are currently in a relationship, those persons who are ex-partners, those persons who are only dating, talking about family members, blood relatives, in-laws. Those are the persons that we're talking about when we talk about domestic violence. In the context of that, we're talking about the violence that happened within that context. And at the center of that is always power and control.
So, Detective Sergeant Hammond, what you see then when you talk about domestic violence, and some people might be victims of domestic violence, but because your auntie abuse you, you're not seeing it as domestic violence because you think domestic violence is man and woman affairs. Isn't that so?
That is so. That's what we're seeing. That's the basic thing, or what readily comes to the mind of an individual about domestic violence, a man and woman story. But it is more than just that.
And so if we look at it from a broader perspective, then we can begin to understand that there are very many different perpetrators and there are very many different victims as well. Maybe perpetrators that we're not looking at and victims that we're not looking at.
Because oftentimes we see the person who's directly impacted by it. And we fail to remember that there are persons who are indirectly impacted. So, for example, within the context of family, the violence may be between wife and husband, but they are children. They witness the violence. They are indirectly impacted, but they also go through the phase of trauma. And because they are going through the same trauma, having to witness their parents at war in the house, it impacts them. And sometimes we forget about them.
So now that we understand it, I want to help people understand, locate the JCF's response to domestic violence, locate its treatment of it within the broader structure of the JCF. It falls within the Community Safety and Security Branch, CSSB, correct?
It falls within community safety. Community safety falls under operations. So it's an operational function because it requires us to respond to a report that is made by a citizen. That is what we swear to do.
Right.
And so when we talk about domestic violence and JCF response, it is responding to reported incidents of domestic violence within the context of the law and the guidelines set out by the organization.
But so while there is a head office, a headquarters, you have domestic violence intervention centers across the country. Explain the DVIC structure, and then also where there are not DVICs, but there are persons who may be trained in that area in other parts of divisions.
So in order for us to be effective in our response, what we have done, the JCF has done, we have a domestic violence intervention unit that oversees the operation of the domestic violence intervention centers that are located right across the island, as well as the territorial officers within divisions where domestic violence centers we do not have domestic violence intervention centers. We also manage the reports in those, or oversee the reports in those divisions, because the CSSB, the Community Safety and Security Unit in each division, has that mandate to ensure that they follow up on all reported incidents of domestic violence. So whether or not there's a domestic violence intervention center, every division has a community safety and security unit. So that is how we coordinate our response. The domestic violence intervention centers are standalone units. Those allow people to go in. Some, people always have the nuances of not wanting to go to a station to talk. And so they prefer to go to a domestic violence intervention unit. Unfortunately, we don't have them all over. So for the divisions that they are in, they are solely responsible to treat with all incidents of domestic violence.
So let's take
including follow-ups.
St. Andrew Central, for instance. Let's take Matilda's Corner. It is a building that is not it's adjacent to
detached from a station.
Right, to the station. So if you're making your report, you don't have to be in the station with other people. And so what kind of a difference has that structure made?
All right, so that structure, being a standalone, offers privacy and confidentiality that you may not necessarily get at the reception area, because the reception area has a number of people from the same communities making different reports. I may want to make a domestic violence report, but I don't want the people from my community to know about it. So with the standalone, having a domestic violence intervention center, it offers privacy and confidentiality. Whatever you say to the center manager remains with the center manager except where intervention is concerned. So nobody can access the files to the domestic violence intervention centers. Nobody can go in there and sit down and look at the computer to look at records and all of that. No.
Sir Hammond, as a center manager, I mean, I suppose you would have known many things, but when them say you're in charge of Portmore now, it's a whole new world, so to speak, you're exposed to. Let us lift the lid for me, if you can, on some of the challenges that you and your colleagues face, not just in Portmore, but across the country, in dealing with domestic violence cases in Jamaica.
Well, the challenges are a lot in terms of operationalizing them, meaning that we have to get our people to a place where they first recognize that this is a problem. Because Ms. Dillon will tell you in moments where persons are sympathetic to their abuser and neglecting them own selves. So the work of the center is not to tell you what to do, but to make recommendations, to show the structures that are in place and to get them to move. So part of the challenge that we have is to get those victims to a point where they recognize that they're in a situation and they're not going to get out if they don't take action. So, but the policing structure of it is not a challenge. The challenge rests really with the victims when they come, to get them to a place where they can, see themselves as worthy and that this is an issue. That is the main thing, to get them, move them to a place of safety in terms of getting the help, getting some orders from the courts and all of that. So, but in our society, that's a big issue as well, because the ecosystem that surrounds a lot of these communities and individuals impact their view and their concept and ideas of what they are going through, what is abuse. Some are accepted in some spaces, and we have to come to a realization. But the thing is that I think we are making progress and inroads in eliminating some of those challenges because of situations where persons have been educated and sensitized. So that's a major challenge in my mind. Probably in some other pockets of the country it's a bit different based on the dynamic.
All right, let me ask you another center manager question. Someone walks in, somebody has made the decision, I am going to report this. What is the typical experience? What is the typical process like when they walk walk in? What does one expect to be asked and to do?
So when a person walks directly to the domestic violence center, you probably see my face if you come to Folkmore. But when you will see persons who know what they're about. I mean, the very ambience of the office. When you walk in, it's like it's a different place you enter. That's the spirit in which we operate.
Right.
So when they come and they see us, we will greet you and we will have a conversation. You are here, how can we assist you? What is happening? You want to tell us? Some persons are not readily willing to, but once they relax, sometimes we offer them something to drink. I say, you need to probably, relax and talk to us, and then we get right into it. So when they come and they talk to us and we are able to do the assessment of this scenario and put forward recommendation as to how we can treat with your matter, in most cases that I have dealt with, some being a bit challenging, but most of them will follow through on what we walk them step by step. So we don't just leave you, we don't just send you somewhere. We make what we call warm referrals. So we say, for instance, I might use you. I say, all right, I'm going to send you to Mr. Brooks. I will make the contact with Mr. Brooks and say, expect this person. Here is a situation, and give you a brief. So that when you look at the web of domestic violence, you don't find the person each time have to repeat and explain to everybody that they go to. So we will do that kind of referral, which eases, probably the tension that the person experiencing.
I want to clarify in my own mind, and for those persons who might be watching. So you go in and you say, you make a report, my woman thumped me down.
Yes.
Yeah? And you're going to ask me what happened or whatever.
Yes.
You're going to write me a CR10. You're going to write me a
Yes,
receipt because I made a report.
Yes.
But then you ask me if I would like to give make a statement.
Yes.
And I said, I don't want to make a statement. I just want to make a report. What is the difference between making a report and giving a statement? Because there are people, I feel, I've had conversations that suggest to me that people will make a report, but they will not go further to make a statement. And then they will say, I went and I reported it to police and they did nothing. Yeah. Explain that distinction.
All right, so when the person comes, we have to give you a receipt because you have made an official report. So write you a CR10, and based on our policy, we'll ask you to give a written statement accounting in detail what has transpired, and you will sign to it that this is what took place, and I'm saying that, I experienced this and I'm signing to it. If you are willing to sign to it, then we go ahead with that. Some persons are not willing to sign to it. So outside of the statement, it would be treated as a general report of the matter.
And you can't act on a report? You can't lock up a man based off a report?
No, we have to give the statement, so we can. That's the evidence that we have. The statement is an evidence indicating that I experienced this, and the police can go and make an arrest where the arrest needs to be made.
Ms. Dillon, I don't know that people fully understand that. And I know that domestic violence intervention in the JCF has taken some undeserved cussing because they say you never did anything. But explain the importance or how frequent is it that people come to make a report and then you ask for further and better, or you ask persons to follow a series of processes and they don't, and then the case is in abeyance?
You see, one of the things that we have found, and I think Jamaicans ought to understand, that within the context of evidence and law, the laws are not that if something happens, you don't have to give a statement if you want an arrest to be effected. But outside of that, the DVI care centers still act not to effect an arrest, because we cannot effect an arrest without a statement, a signed statement by a complainant. However, if you make a report to the Domestic Violence Center or to any of the stations, we are duty bound to act. So we can visit the accused person. We can call that person in. We can have a conversation.
Yes.
The only thing we can't do is effect an arrest. But we're going to advise you to do some things. Things that we advise you to do. If you're in fear for your life, go to the court, get a protection order, get an occupation order. You can seek counseling to deal with the trauma of having to go through what you have gone through. All of that rests with a complainant or a victim's willingness to follow through on what the center managers or the police advise them to do. In many instances where you find that persons will say, oh, the police did nothing, it is because when the complainants are advised, they go nowhere. So many Jamaicans believe that when they go to a station and they make a report, that's it, they don't have to do anything, they can just sit back and relax. It's not like that. Because we do not have laws where, unless you die, example, a dying declaration where you die a year or a day before, within a year or a day, after an incident that happens, that's different. An incident happened to you. The laws require you to give evidence because the accuser, the person who you accuse of committing that offense against you, it's natural justice, must face you. They can't face you if you don't give a statement. Police can't effect an arrest without a statement. We have no legs to stand on. And so that is the major thing about persons not willing to follow it through.
One of the things that I would hope would come out of this conversation is to totally dismiss this notion. And it's an old notion because I think it is not as prevalent as it used to be, but that notion, sure, it don't make sense, not come out of it. Like, I know that you are quite busy on a daily, weekly, monthly basis with many cases, as are you, and domestic violence intervention officers across the country, that you are always working on matters, you're always pursuing matters, but there's this notion among some people that it not makes sense, nobody go report it, not come out of it.
Can I say, it is not just a domestic violence issue.
Yes.
It's a natural issue coming back from way back when. A lot of people tell, oh, I don't want to go to the court. So that's why I go report the police and I go down there and tie up. Because we want to take the easy way out and to be able to say in a conversation that, oh, I went to the police and they didn't do anything. But we did not say, oh, I went to the police, but I did not follow through. Or I went to the police and at the last minute I changed my mind. So here's a woman or a man who comes to us, badly beaten, say, okay, you're willing to give a statement? Yes. By the time you start to record the statement, oh, me not bother. But then the same person will go back and say, oh, I go to the police and I give a statement. Where's the statement that you give? You have not given one because you have not signed to a statement. You said you're not going to be bothering. And that is why when persons come, start to give a statement, or they say, I do not wish to give a statement, we ask you to sign to that. Because that is our evidence that you came, but you were not willing to give a statement.
Jackie Dillon, you've been doing this for a while, and some of the times you know the telltale signs. You know the signs when that man is a lie, or that woman is a lie, and this person is being abused, or this child is being abused. You've pretty much seen it all, or most of it. What are some of the telltale signs? And I ask this question because when someone dies, or when something extreme happens, the first thing, me didn't know. Everybody did know after the fact. But what are some of the things before the fact that you say these are telltale signs that this is not going well and this is going to end up as a domestic violence matter?
One of the most common forms is when you listen to a person and talk about obsessive, I wouldn't call it obsessive compulsive behavior, it's obsession. So I can't do this without, or I'll have to ask permission to do this. Or there is the withdrawal. Now imagine you have a very vibrant person and all of a sudden they are withdrawn in themselves. They don't have friends. They don't speak to persons who they normally speak to. They are the persons who you know, they don't normally wear makeup heavy. And all of a sudden they're putting on the heavy makeup and all of these things. And sometimes when you listen to some of the conversation, conversation and body language is important, and that is why, as domestic violence practitioners, we have to be able to understand body language.
Like what kind of body language? Just prips me a little bit.
She's doing some of it now.
So I am just
She's posturing.
Yeah, or the liquor.
You know, and the load is heavy. Those kind of body language. The eyes tell a lot. There are persons when they are lying, the eyes keep moving. You know, you're not able to. It's not steady. They can't look you in the eye. They look over your head. They look on the ground. They look elsewhere, depending on the questions that you're asking. And so when persons come to us, we have to be able. So for example, a gentleman came to me, a lady came first, and I sent and I called the gentleman. And when I started to ask him some questions, if I was not quick enough, I would have missed the sign, because there's a cloud that comes over his eyes when I ask a particular question. So persons become uncomfortable with some questions that you may ask. Those are telltale signs. This is where now you need to interrogate a little bit more when people get uneasy. I can't sit in that chair. And I'm moving because you're coming too close to home. So you
push a little bit further and see what happens.
You push a little further and you prod a little further and you ask some questions. There are people who really tear up, they cry, bawl. And sometimes it's not because they're hurting. It's a form of manipulation. And so you have to know, you have to know the genuine tears as against those that are manipulative, because sometimes the tears really manipulation. And then you have those who want to tell you everything. Oh, I want to tell you everything because I want you to see me good. In domestic violence term and other terms, we call it gaslighting. You must see me as a perfect person. But then when you start to ask questions, you realize that there's another side. And remember that we are dealing with varying personalities. You have those that are narcissistic.
Hammond, what are some then the misconceptions that if you're not in it, if you don't see it every day, you think, or you know out there so think this, but we who do it every day, we know this. What are some of the common misconceptions that people have about domestic violence that you think we should address? Well,
I think people misunderstood in terms of misunderstand that it only happened to one set of people. Or it most happened to people at the lower strata. But from what we are seeing, unless those persons are not reporting and they deal with their issues a particular way, but domestic violence has no face. And so it's not one group of people as opposed to another group of persons.
When you say group, gender,
social strata, your address, and your occupation as well.
But like if you go church, you're good. No, amongst church people. It
has no boundaries.
That's what I'm trying to say. There's no boundary there, but people believe that it happens to just poor people, for instance. People are in the ghetto. No. It touches and concerns every part of society. Persons will be surprised at the levels that it occurs. Right? So for me, Ms. Dillon, no part of society is untouched at this stage.
DSP Dillon, Sergeant Hammond, this is a fascinating conversation. We're out of time. I'm going to ask, please, if you could just rejoin me next week. Definitely, we're going to have to continue this conversation, taking a deep dive, looking at matters relating to domestic violence. That's all the time we have for the Force for Good podcast for this week. But stay with us. Part 2 will come next week.